had planned for ourselves. But what you do see on the sheet that you have there is our preliminary STAR data, that while we might have missed it for our goal here right now, and we just missed it by 4 percentage points, we did actually increase from last year's STAR results. So we're at 41% in 2024, and we actually moved up to 48%. So while we didn't need 52, we still made a 7-point increase overall for STAR. What I do have for you at the bottom still too is the graph that I've had throughout the year that just shows the CBAs and the benchmarks. So you can have that information to go off it as well. So that's the one part that I have for goal 5. One thing I can say too for the rating part of it, so thank you, Mr. Townsend, too, we do have an extra person that we'll have next year, an extra FTE teacher that we actually will put into ELAR. So we'll go back to 2 and 2 6th grade ER teachers, 2 7th and 2 8th grade. That will definitely help because with the reading and writing, with the extra FTE, that's where the emphasis right now. Questions on the reading?
How many did you have that hit masters? You said you had 48%.
We had 27. We went from 17 to 27.
Wow, that's very good.
So that's what we have on there. So our preliminary data
How many,
there.
I'm not looking at it, how many did not?
27. We had 73% approach, so 27 did not.
And I'd like to,
Did not pass.
I'd like to kind of, I don't want to rush past it so we can get the meeting, so I'd like to come back to that after we do a little bit of business and then look at the STAR results. But we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order this time. Get into the budget hearing and then we'll bring you back up and finish our calls. Yeah, just a quick pause there. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:13. We are at the H.J. McAllister building. We do have a quorum of trustees present now with 4 present. And this meeting was posted in accordance to law. So first we'll start with invocation, and Mr. Townsend is going to lead us in that.
Heavenly Father, we ask your continued presence here with us tonight. We humbly ask that you surround us with your Holy Spirit as we seek to do your will. Father, we ask that you wash away self-service and open our hearts to selfless decision-making with one unified voice. We give you all the glory and thank you for your saving grace. Help us, Father, not to seek your powerful forgiveness without accompanying it with sincere heart and meaningful action. We ask your blessings on our students, families, staff, school, and community, and that your favor surrounds them like a shield all the days of their lives. We pray these things in Jesus Christ's most powerful name. Amen.
Amen. And now for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Anybody like to share any good news? I'll just say real quick, I'm loving all the summer athletic programs. 77 soccer was fun getting out in the field with the kids and getting back to refereeing again. And then all the girls at the junior high, all the boys at the high school, it's fun to see them all get excited for football and working with their coaches. So
I'm not loving the 6 o'clock start.
just keep coming here. Okay, there are no celebration of excellence tonight. We had no audience or patrons submitted in time. And so we will go right into items of business, and we will enter into a public hearing at 6:15 to discuss the 2025-2026 budget. And Vince, we've all seen this already, so we'll just hit it at a high level if anything's changed since the last meeting. And then a reminder to the public that you are now welcome to participate in the meeting. I just ask that we respect each other, and if someone's talking, we just kind of get each other's attention and wait our turn to ask a question.
Sounds great. All right, well, as you said, everything stayed the same. Here's a link to the TA spending plan. That's part of the requirement that we've maintained. We discussed in the board budget workshop last week factors influencing the budget process that none of these have changed here in the legislative session. As a reminder, we're adopting this under current law, so not anything related to HB2. Talked about property values and tax compression quite a bit. Now we're expecting to see almost a $700 million increase. So we should be compressing the floor. We talked about adopted revenue versus proposed for this year. We had a decrease in ADA due to declining enrollment. You're seeing a almost $3 million loss in state revenue, but almost $2.5 million gain. So the delta, that's going to be about $500,000. You attribute that to the loss of, like I said, loss of enrollment, but also something we talked about was the SEE counts are down by about 50 because of the direct services. Overall, that's more or less what we talked about throughout the entire budget process. Miscellaneous revenue is down because we went from E-rate reimbursements to SPY billing, and then we exited the SHARS program, so all that revenue is no longer going to be coming in. TRS on behalf, also because we adopted custodial services, RFP is down to account for those employees. Overall, the 25-26 general fund expenditures by function, instruction makes up 52%, followed in second place by facilities and maintenance at 17.4. Keep in mind that the majority of that's going to be made up by your contract there. So it's just a maintained amount there, and then your utilities and some of those other pieces. Followed by school leadership, and we saw some of these included, and I'll kind of explain why here in a second. There's the percentages that feed that chart broken down. Bless you. So this is what we had coming into this week from last week is a budget of $40,688,106. Looking at comparison of what we adopted to what we're proposing tonight, anything in red is where we've decreased the function, anything in green, anything in red is where we've increased, anything in green is where we've had those decreases. Going by function 11 instruction, we brought that down by about 7,200. Increased by 7,200. Instructional resources and media, 12 is on by 8,000. That's also just depending on how the campuses are broken up their allotments. Looking at 13, that's down by about 66.5. Instructional leadership is down by 40,000. School leadership is up by 97. So when I took a deeper dive into that, a lot of that's attributed to the 6,100 or the salaries, stipends, and benefits. That's the big piece with that. And the difference is that last year we kept it all budgeted in kind of one area. Took the salaries and stipend amounts and added an additional 14% to that to get our number. This year we have a lot more data. In the sense that Skyward took it and actually calculated everything out and put that there. So it's estimating really, really high on the benefits and the deductions there. So all those taxable benefits and some of those things we're having to pay, it's kind of building ahead, it's budgeting ahead for those based on what was paid out of those account goes in the system. So that's why that's the explanation that I have for those functions that we looked at last week: 23, 31, and then 34. The majority of those increases were there. Looking at 34 though, there was one thing there that I was looking at. Fuel costs were down this year, but just making sure that we're contributing for those. Other than that, the big driving factor there, and once again, similar to 23 and 31, is that piece is being calculated by Skyward. 52 went up slightly outside of those 6100s, but it's because of, once again, how some of these campuses have budgeted for it. So that's just, they felt they needed to spend more on some security because of some things that were brought up in the DBA audit as a suggestion. They went ahead and did those things for their campus because we're funding the requirements from the DBA audit, which is a district vulnerability assessment. So we're funding those, but if there's anything that was more or less a suggestion and not a requirement, then the campuses have the ability to take their allotment and put it in those areas. Looking at 41, we're down, and like I said, none of this has changed other than me just going in and taking the deep dive. The only change that I will call to y'all's attention is function 81. We make sure to put in the remaining balance from the 2022 maintenance tax note. So that's what we still have left to spend out. Other than that, if you look at it, we had 2024, 2025, our budget was $40,388,394. We went up to by $299,000 to $40,688,106.
And that's not a huge increase when you think about inflation. So
Exactly.
that really is almost a cut.
Yeah, And the campuses have done a phenomenal job dealing with it. Some of the cost cutting measures we went into is last year we cut everything by 10%. We took an additional 10% from their allocation per student. So let's say you're getting funded at $100 per student, we cut you by 10% last year, so you're getting 90. This year you're getting $80 per student. And that's a simple, math breakdown there. Payroll costs make up 67.4% of the local budget, with 16.8 of those being contracted services. Dr. Pronto's team does a really good job of making sure that we're meeting staffing needs with the contracted side, because it's not just your specialists anymore, it's teachers, some of those in behavior units, some of those places that are harder to staff, but we still have to fill. So some of that contracted services that you're gonna see there, typically we see that payroll costs around 70%, but because of what we're having to do for contract, and some of those contracted employees, you're seeing that amount go up there. Debt service comes in at 4.5%, and then supplies and materials comes in at 4.4%. So overall, this is what I showed you guys last week. Projected revenue of $34.5 million, proposed budget of 40.6. Looking at that, we're looking at a deficit of 6.2. Just looking at this, we're seeing, okay, we had our adopted deficit of 4.4 last year, an increase in expenses of $299,000, a decrease in revenue of 1.4. That's how it's broken up. Fund balance, just a reminder, this is something that I took from BCISD, is what fund balance is and when it's not. It's not a savings account, it's not a rainy day fund, and it's not the result of unduly high taxes. The suggestion is, we should have 3 months on hand. We didn't have that this year because of where we're at already with deficit. Big picture, where we're at, we're looking at a deficit of 6.2. We project working with region. As I mentioned last week, we came up with a projected fund balance, ending fund balance for this fiscal year of 4.4. With adopting a deficit of 6.2, we'll end the fiscal year in the red. Negative 1.7, almost 1.8 fund balance. And I know that's scary and daunting, but keeping in mind this is all adopted under current law. Looking ahead to House Bill 2, this isn't what we're adopting, but this is the relief that's going to be coming from some of that. A lot of these are based on estimates. The state, in terms of TDA, they're still interpreting everything that was signed into law. So working with Casey, looking at the House Bill 2 runs, we're seeing about $2 million available in new funding that will be amending the budget for coming next month in August. And then an estimated revenue increase if, there's 12 pennies available, tier 2 pennies. You have the option to offer those with either a Vader or claiming disaster pennies. And so that could yield about 3.6 million. So looking at those 2 additional sources of funding, you jump from that 1.8 to almost a 3.8. Quite a swing there. But as we mentioned, a lot of the House Bill 2 is going to be some pass-through revenue for teacher raises, the support staff allotment as well, the increased payroll, like TRS contributions that the district has to make, that'll come out of that ABC allotment. So that's why we're trying to estimate, be conservative with that HB2 additional revenue too. Outside of that, we're going to have those pennies one way or another, either with the Vader or with claiming the disaster from America.
So I don't know if you guys want to do a motion to adopt, and then I want to have a conversation with you about what we need guidance on moving forward to be able to get those 12 available pennies. So we can have that discussion now and then do it, or it's up to you guys. The budget is what it is, but I do want you to know that there is a path. But how we get to that path, I'm going to want to know what the board's guidance on that is.
Before we make that decision, because of what we have to adopt and how we adopt every year, I just wanted to show you guys the INS budget. This is assuming that we maintain our current tax rate at 34 cents. If it goes down, then we won't really know until later on. But So projected state and local revenue is coming in at about 7.8. Total expenditures that are currently scheduled are 7.1, so we're expecting a surplus of about 774,000. Now, if those property taxes hold, then we may end up changing that. That rate to maintain may go down by 5 or 6 cents, depending on what the estimated, what the certified appraisal roll ends up being. Looking at it overall, healthy fund balance in INS. And then looking at the food service budget, total projected revenue of 2.7, expect expenditures of about 3 million, ending in a deficit of 278,000. This is the one time I will say having a deficit is a good thing. Here's what the state wants us to see. It's because as a reminder, during COVID, they pumped a ton of money into food service budgets, and now they're looking for food service departments to cut down that tremendously. So, Brandon Gray's having to submit something called an ENCR to kind of show how he's going to reduce his fund balance into what they consider an appropriate amount. So originally it was 3 months for them. They're trying to, because of the problem that they created by pumping all that money in there with really no way of, spending that money very quickly because they have to approve all those big purchases. They're looking at moving that up to 6 months. That was a change that was supposed to be coming in over the summer. So that's, like I said, it's going to be one of the only times you'll hear me say that the deficit budget is good, and that's because they're supposed to be bringing that fund balance down into those months of fund balance there. So he's going to end the year with about 1.8 in his fund balance. But I know this is what we're really wanting to talk about, and I'll hand it off to Mr. Townsend for any other questions.
I would suggest we do adoption first.
Yeah, I mean, the budget's the budget, so if anybody has any questions, if there's any comments or questions from the public, let's handle those now, and then we can make a motion and vote on the current budget. Then we'll talk about how we move forward. No, we're gonna exit the public hearing and go back into the meeting before we make a motion. Yeah, if anybody has any, we've been doing this every week for 2 months, so, I've seen it, so I don't have any questions right now. I'll have more questions about how we move forward than I do about, what we're at, what we're done. I'm not hearing any questions or comments, so we will exit public hearing at 6:29. Is there a motion to be made?
Make a motion, we adopt the current budget as presented.
There's a motion on the floor by trustee Tim. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
Motion's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Okay.
All right, so Vince basically has it mapped out here for you. The estimated from HB2 is 2 million, but that is estimated, okay? And we were very conservative with that piece, so that would be, we talked about defeasance with the M&O loans, what do we do with anything that's extra? We talked to financial advisors and everything, and they advised us that at this point, you need to apply directly to the deficit, obviously. And so that would be applied directly to the deficit. And then 12 pennies are available for us to either get through a disaster relief or through VADR, a voter-approved tax rate. So the difference is that we had Hurricane Beryl last year, and for the year preceding that year, you may adopt what's called disaster pennies. So whatever pennies you have left that are available, you can go out for all of them, some of them, whatever it is that you want. But you would do that as a board when you adopt the tax rate. You do not go to the voters for that. You just adopt the tax rate using those disaster pennies. It only lasts for 1 year, and then that revenue is gone. A VADR, you have to go to the voters, and they have to vote, and it has to be a super majority on the vote, 60%. And if they pass it, then you have that for the rest of history. Okay, that's yours. So that would be a continuous generator. what I would suggest is that, as you can see, if we don't have the 12 pennies, then when we get to the end of this year, it will be done. And so, if you think about it, do you want to risk passing a Vader right now, or taking what you know is guaranteed? Do you want to guarantee the district is solvent for another year, or do you want to risk it on an election right now? And here's what I'm telling you, it's going to be hard for this team. There's a lot of things involved with it. It's going to be hard for this team to be able to pull this off and do it well in the timeline that we have, because it would be a November election, and there's a lot of things that have to happen like right now, starting right now. If we elected to do these disaster pennies, one of the things that Vince had talked about is we can offset that cost to the public, the taxpayer, with the INS. Talk about that for a minute, Vince.
Yeah, so right now, we're assuming that that tax rate that I showed you guys a minute ago would hold, the rates maintain. It could come down, if property values stay consistent, they could come down by about 8 cents. So if you look at the overall, what you're adopting, say your overall's $1, but then, you would probably go up to $1.04 on the total, because you're decreasing that by 7 to 8 cents on the INS side, but you're increasing it by those 12 on the M&O side. The M&O was gonna save, keep everything open here, bring in that additional 3.6 per year, and then allows for the planning for going out for a Vader for 26, 27, to make sure that it's done right. Of course, you're gonna have to pay for, an efficiency audit at that point, and that's something that, no one says you can't do an efficiency audit this year, in the year that you buy yourself time. And so that's something that you could also do with the guaranteed year that you have.
So our plan is to come back to you in July with more information, or what we need to make a decision on. And really, it's not a decision, but because you wouldn't, if you said, okay, we want to do Vader, you wouldn't vote on that and do that until August, right? But, and same thing with the disaster pennies. But the problem is, there's a lot of things that have to happen starting right now. And if you say, we want to risk it on Vader, then we got to start right now preparing for that, for you to be able to approve it at that time. So we don't want time to lapse. If you say, no, we want to guarantee this year, and then we want to take time to prepare for the Vader to maximize the chance for it to pass, then we'll bring that to you in August when it's the appropriate time to do that. There's not a decision or a movement. It's what do we think is going to be best for the district?
Got 2 questions on that. One is, I agree with what you're saying, and I think of it also as another way, in that we've been getting promises for 3 or 4 years, like help is coming, the state's gonna do something, and they haven't done anything. And then now in the last 60 days or so, they're finally starting to do something, and we're seeing House Bill 2, and we're hearing of other things that are coming, and House Bill 2 has some things that we don't even know for sure how it impacts us. In some ways it could be way better, in some ways it could not. So I really like the idea of the disaster side of buying us 1 more year so that we can see if we actually do get that promised help from the state or not before we do a lifelong, so to speak, Vader. So I like that aspect of it too, of just, we just need a temporary fix, and hopefully that'll go away once we get some help. And then my second question is I'd like a time frame from you on because we've been promised so many times, right? When is the date that y'all need to know so that we're set up for the best success if we are moving forward with the Vader? Like, do y'all need to know in October? Do you need to know in November? No, not for right now, for next year.
Oh,
Like, if you have time and you're like, we're gonna do this right, and we're still not seeing any help from the state, when do you need to know from us, like, yeah, we need to start doing all of the announcements and getting all of the public behind us and all that?
right. Well, I think that the education piece starts now, because we're going to be adopting, if we adopt the disaster pennies, the public needs to know why. They need to know what's brought us to this and what are we doing, and then what does that look like. They need to know that it's finite, and so we had to do this piece. But we're trying to offset the cost to them with the INS so it doesn't hit them so hard. maybe 4 cents is what they'll see overall,
Right.
instead of 12. But I think what it's probably, we would need to know by May of next year.
And we don't have to have like the answer right now, but that's something I would wanna know, because if it is May of next year, then because we love to discuss things so much, I would want it on the board agenda by at least,
Right.
February
To
or,
discuss.
March or something, like 2 months before
Yeah.
your date.
So,
Put it on the,
so what happens is August is when you call it for the November election,
right,
right? So that's the only action that.
but you wanna know from us if we wanna move forward or not before
Right.
August.
Right, and I would tell you that it's probably gonna be likely, I don't see a scenario where you don't have to move here. Because this is it, the 2 million, you're not gonna see more than that. I really don't think you're gonna see much more than that. Not enough to make up for almost 4 million that we're gonna get with the disaster and the Vader, those 12 additional pennies. And that's the only way that we're going to be able, and we'll show you what that path looks like when we come back in July, but that's the only way that it's gonna buy us possibly enough time to be able to get some additional revenue ideas and some things going to where we can cripple along for a couple more years and then start slowly building up that fund balance, and I mean slowly. I don't see a path where you don't have to do a Vader. But to answer your question, we really would need to know around Christmas time if that's gonna be something we need to pursue. Because it's a lot, you're gonna have to start really
Yeah.
pounding things out. And tomorrow, we've got a consultant, who's gonna be meeting with us in cabinet to talk to us about what that looks like and what they can do for us. They have had a tremendous track record, with, kind of like when you pass a bond, it's the same thing. So we're already laying that groundwork and learning what we need to learn. And one of the things that we will talk about in July is that you are required to do an efficiency audit that's associated with that. But we would propose that we do an efficiency audit now, even though we're not running a Vader, so that we have professionals helping us to identify some of those areas of efficiency that we're sitting here, we're struggling to find, right? Because we feel like we're at the bare bones. And so then we can start implementing that at the end of next year, ready to go doing that, so that by the time we get to, it's time to call a Vader, and we do another efficiency audit with that Vader, then now we've already done all those efficiencies, and we've gone through that process, and that will help the voters and everybody understand where we're at, and we've done everything that we can at that point. I don't know if I want to.
I was gonna kind of ditto that, Mr. Chris, and Mr. Chris is spot on, and that was kind of the discussions that we've had as a team is, what are we gonna do to best service our community so that they know what is a Vader? I know Mr. Chris mentioned it a second ago, when you sit down and ask us, yes, we could figure it out, but I don't feel that we're gonna give our community enough conversations to be able to fully trust us when it comes to the Vader. So our goal was, let's go ahead and start having those conversations with maybe a consultant to really start generating those conversations with the community. So we wanted to start that process of, could we do it in December? Could we even start in November, so that we start going ahead and getting ahead of the communication to the community to drive and spearhead that process for it. And so when it does come to August of next year, they already know what Vader is. It's not some random word that's coming out. It's truly, this is what we're doing moving forward to support the community and to really get us to the point where we need for the deficit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Mark said. The added problem is, it's hard because there is no help coming next year because the legislature doesn't meet, or legislation doesn't even meet next year. So we got 2 years now before we hear anything from them. So I think disaster pennies now, Vader education to follow, then Vader, then the session comes out. But at least, we've gotten through a couple of 2-3 years, and hopefully something more comes from it. So.
And you'll see that even if there's no action for the next session, that we do have a pathway, but it's going to be extremely tight, and we will continue to experience what we have with our cash flow and our fund balance. That will not go away, and it may increase even more because we're going to be a little bit tighter, right? So those things will be there, but it's going to be impossible for us not to start having those conversations now, and especially so that our staff understand as well. Everybody thinks that there's all this money coming to the schools, and it is. And thank God that it's coming to the teachers. That's amazing, and that's great. But in the smoke cloud, it looks like it's gonna help the school, and it's not. There's very little actually gonna help the school. So they need to understand that, because it will always be spun as we're spending $8 billion, but is it really addressing the problem? And it's not. So, you know, I just need everybody's input on, you want to do the disaster? Because if you want to do Vader now, we got to start doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, I know we always have a choice, but it sounds like we don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
And I mean, as far as the Vader too, I mean, if it's pretty much inevitable that we will have to do it for 26, 27, then I mean, the answer to your question is we start now.
Yeah. So I was wondering if we had like let the state see if they're gonna help us anymore with
Yeah.
HB2. If they haven't helped October, then you say, all right, we're moving forward with the bidder, but it sounds like we don't even need to wait for that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mr. Eden?
No little road.
I guess the best way I could put it is that, just to really simplify it, do you want to risk or do you want to guarantee? Because if we don't get the Vader pad, if we go for the Vader, you can't come back and do disaster. That's it. That's it. And so if that happens, then we're done. And so it's like a guarantee, and there's a lot that can happen in a year. There's a lot that can happen in a year as opposed to not even giving it a shot.
And I think myself, I would be more comfortable with all 7 of us talking about that and really getting the same understanding.
Right. And I did have an opportunity to talk to Ms. Westmoreland, and she was in support of doing the 12. I didn't want to bother Ms. I didn't want to bother her Priscilla, because yeah. And it's not, like I said, it's not a decision thing, but if you were gonna do the Vader, we'd have to, there's some things that we're gonna miss deadlines on if we don't, you know.
And I know it seems like we're kicking the can, but really we're setting ourselves up to have the best opportunity to.
Yes, yes.
I mean, we want the best, but so much is being said about it, it's becoming convoluted to me.
I got you. Well, it's this simple. We're gonna have to have those 12 additional pennies.
Okay.
We have to, in order to survive, we have to have the 12 additional pennies. How do we want to get them? Do we want to guarantee that we get them this year, or do we want to gamble?
Now, with the guarantee we get them this year, we'll have to spend them or lose what we.
So we will, so if we go out so if we adopt 12 additional pennies, then we will have that income this year, and we will be able to go another year, okay? And then, but that will not be available, it goes away after that year. That's why you would have to then turn around and do the Vader to get the same additional 12 pennies to keep getting that revenue.
Well, you said 60% vote, right? Yeah, can we trust it to get the 60% vote?
That's the question. Can you trust it now, or do you want to guarantee it? So there's 2 ways to get it. Leave it to the voters right now, and if they say no, then we're done after a year. We do the disaster, it may be in God's plan that the Hurricane Burrow came, and that we had some damages, and that we qualify to do this. You know what I mean? And so, it's either, yeah, I know for sure that we're gonna make it this year, and we'll be open at the end of this year, or, I don't know. We're gonna try it, and if it doesn't work, I'm sorry, we're shutting it down.
I mean, is there a downfall to taking the pennies now and pushing the Vader back?
There's two downfalls. Right now, if we were to do Vader, within that disaster time, you don't have to pay for an efficiency audit. It's required that you do one,
What is,
so.
how much is that?
Probably around 50,000, I don't know what, we haven't quoted for those yet.
So, and then the other thing is you're essentially taking it. You're taking it instead of going into it. But if we're able to offset that with the INS, I think it'll minimize the impact. And truly, we've compressed our tax rate so much that I don't think they'll see a significant difference.
The scary thing for me, and it's my decision, is when we get to the end of the year and we don't have any money, and 70% of our budget is salaries, salary checks aren't going out. If we're $1.7 million negative and we spent all the, you know what I mean? That's just what, that'll be the last things that'll be getting paid at the end of the year, and it's not gonna go out. And so I'm all for the disaster pennies.
That's sort of where we are now, right? With the, what we had to do with the loan.
Yeah, but that's just an ebb and flow. I mean, we're still net positive for the year. It's just funding came in later.
Right.
Yeah.
Not, you know, just
Yeah, but next year's budget will actually be a net negative. We'll have spent all of our fund balance and essentially be $1.8 million in the hole.
what's the chance of the HB2, the actual chance?
Oh, it's passed.
Okay.
It's passed. Yes, sir. It is passed.
So
It is
looking
law.
at that, and then the penny, right?
The pennies are, we have to find a mode, choose a mode to grab the pennies.
And the modes are just,
The modes are disaster adoption by the board, done in August. Or you go to the voters in November and they either give it to you or they don't.
so those are the two options.
Or is it, that's the only way to get those pennies.
And we're not voting on it tonight.
Right,
We
right.
just want your input.
Now, I know we're gonna do best for the district and reach out and grab the best, so. Talk more back there. I think it's more to be said.
Well, I think you two can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But we cannot go back here as a quorum and discuss that. That's
Okay.
part of the open meeting.
Okay.
And like I said, it's not a decision point right now. I mean, like,
Right.
we don't have to vote,
Right.
but we're gonna miss timelines if you said we absolutely want to do that. So, all right.
We good on this? Hear what you need?
Yeah.
Okay. Consent agenda, A, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, June 10th, 2025 board workshop meeting. B, approval of financial report, May 2025, and budget amendment number 3. C, approval of Region 3 contractor services. And D, first reading of policy update 125. Is there any item that any board member would like removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to be made? Trustee West has made a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
Trustee Flynn has seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say no. Motion passes 4-0. We will now convene into executive session. We will move into closed session at 6:49 p.m. To discuss one, personnel matters if necessary may be taken into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, resignation, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including contract recommendations for campus and district level administrators and teachers. session at 6:53. B, reconvene in open session. 1, discuss and consider approval of hiring of contractual personnel. Is there a motion be made?
Make a motion to approve contractual personnel as printed in the book.
Motion been made by trustee West. Is there a second to his motion?
Second.
Motion been seconded by trustee Timmons. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion passes 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Item 11, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Trustee West, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good. Motion's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion passes 4-0. We will go back to LSG now.
Take 254.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Now I can retire.
We still got another month, sister.
Here we go.
Always a ball buster.
That was the fastest closed session I've ever been in.